We hold in special prayer today Tom Tunnicliffe, Jeff Brown, Harold Fogelberg, George Johnson, and Louis Rankins. May each of them feel your comfort, strength, and peace in whatever challenges or transitions they're facing. Surround them with support, encouragement, and healing. We also give heartfelt thanks for all those within Rotary and throughout our wider community who freely give their time, talents, and compassion to make life better for others. Bless every volunteer who shows up quietly, consistently, and wholeheartedly to enrich the lives of neighbors, families, and strangers alike. Guide us in our work today, inspire us to lead with kindness, act with integrity, and serve with purpose. May everything we do reflect the ideals of Rotary and the spirit of service above self. Amen.
Now we'll do the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the four-way test. All the things we think, say, and do. First, second, third, fourth, and the fifth one.
Thank you. Great. Now our Secretary Jennifer Shepard is going to introduce our visitors and guests. We are so glad to see lots of new faces, and we're going to have a great day.
Great. Hey, everybody. Welcome. We've got a few guests today, a couple of them that I might be introducing for the last time as a guest. We've got prospective members who are in our membership pipeline, Maria Edelman and Mike Huff. They both went through orientation today. So we're planning, So we're planning to induct them next Friday. And then we've got Elliot Smith, who is here. This is your second time visiting, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. And I have a guest. This is Holcomb Burke. Stand up. Okay, Holcomb works with Innsbank with me and Patrick Wright. He's a private banker. And the pertinent things you need to know about him is he's got 3 amazing kids. He's a Georgia fan. Where's Betsy? No, Betsy? Okay. Our biggest Georgia fan is not here today. And he's a golfer. Where's Larry? Okay, golf. Don't need to talk golf. Anyway, thank you for being here.
Excellent. Great. Thank you, Jennifer. We have lots of great announcements and lots of things are going on. So next week, all right, everybody's got this on their calendar, the club assembly. The club assembly is important because it is when we will elect our slate of officers who will run this Rotary Club. We'll also be doing club business. But what also is important about next week is we need to be here. According to bylaws, we have to have 50% attendance. So please make every effort to come. It'll still be the same great food. It'll still be the same great fellowship, but we're going to do some club business and vote. So please make plans to be here either in person or on Zoom, but hopefully in person. So other things we've got coming up in the new year, we're going to have some DAC-DB training in the new year. So we're looking forward to that. We come back January 8th, we're going to have a club social at Sheila's house. Yay, Sheila. Thank you for letting us do that, hosting that for us. We're so excited. And then we've got some other activities of service projects that I'm going to let Laura Troop tell you about what we've got coming up.
Thank you, Susie. Okay, we've got a couple of service projects that are coming up that are food insecurity related. January 17th, we're going to be doing a GraceWorks mobile pantry. That is at Fairview Middle School from 8 to 10 a.m. Mark that on your calendar. That is in Reflections every week, so be sure you're keeping an eye out for that. We're going to try to do that monthly with GraceWorks. We're going to stay in rhythm with them so that we can continue working on projects like that. On January the 24th, we have our Rotary county-wide event. Other Rotary clubs are going to work on this project with us, and that is Rise Against Hunger. Are we okay? Everybody okay? I couldn't tell if I was being booed. Okay, Rise Against Hunger, January 24th. That's at Franklin High, 8:30 a.m. And an ongoing project that, that we've been invited to participate with other Rotarians. Colleen and I had the opportunity to do this last week, but it's the carousel at the factory at Franklin. So she and I got to volunteer. It is absolutely stunning, you guys, and it's a really cool opportunity for us to be serving nonprofits in the area. All the proceeds from the tickets that are sold for the carousel go to area nonprofits, and they rotate these nonprofits every year. So they're about to vote on the next nonprofits to include. So if you have 2 hours, buddy with somebody up in the club, find a friend who you can do it with, and it's an opportunity for you to spend time with them and get to know them and spend time with them. But then it's also a great way for Rotary to be represented out in the community as well. Great. Hope you guys will join us.
You want to say anything about the Harpeth River?
Yes. Okay. So thank you let's tease that out. Harpeth River cleanup is coming in the beginning of the new year. If there's anyone who wants to join us on that committee to help coordinate that effort and make plans for making it a smooth day, an effective day, and a day for us to work with others in the community. It is our largest community involvement service project. So that's going to happen. The date is February 8th, I think. So coming up. 7th, February 7th. Please don't show up on the 8th. No one will be there. It'll be clean already. Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you. A lot of great opportunities. Our district is having a contest with other districts on food insecurity projects. So all the things that we do as far as serving people, raising money, procuring food, that goes towards this district contest that we're having. And then also we talked about the Harpeth River cleanup. My son thinks that is the greatest project because he worked on it one year when he was little, and some Rotarian lost his phone in the project, and my son found it and he got $5. And he thought he was rich. So he's always like, oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. You can make money. Yeah. Anyway. All right. So, as we're going into the holiday season, there's so much that we are grateful for, and I'm sure everyone has a very, very long list, but we're going to let Scott Robinson collect happy bucks, and everyone can have a chance to announce what you're happy about. So Scott.
Thank you, and happy Friday, everyone. I'll start with $1 in the basket and share that I was able to spend Tuesday evening with a company that I credit for all of my professional success, and that's In-N-Out Burger had their friends and family night on Tuesday. Lebanon and Antioch opened, I believe, on Wednesday, and I think we were supposed to have Murfreesboro opening today. A lot of young folks are struggling out there. They don't feel like they have an opportunity to try and have a job that pays well, and the finances are tough. These kids that are there, they love having you come and visit. It's going to be a great time. I know the lines are insane right now, but when you get a chance, just go out and support. They're a wonderful company. I really encourage everyone to look into them a little bit more if they haven't. And just happy to share, like I said, a company that means so much to me. All right. Yeah, I was there for 15 years. Put me through management classes. My original management trainer was actually there. I haven't seen him in 20 years. And so, it's really special to me. And I would love to talk to anybody else that wants to learn more. It's a cool company. Yeah, it was not expected. And it's kind of true nirvana now. I get to have a double whenever I want.
My second born, Brooke, is an oncology nurse at Sarah Cannon Institute, and she also got married this year, and she graduated this year, and she started nurse practitioner school this year, and she just passed her first semester, and 38 minutes ago, I found out she made honor roll, so she has a lot going on.
All right, who we got next? Jennifer.
I got 2 things. I want to say thank you for everyone that supported the foundation drive. Those of you that have already made your donation, thank you so much. If you haven't, please do so, unless you want to hear from me in the next 2 weeks. And if you want to hear from me, then, but thank you so much. I appreciate it. We're going to have a great year. We'll roll out some actual numbers for those probably end of January, February, as we really noodle it down. And so for my second little announcement here, I would like to know, who do I submit a complaint to about the ice?
No.
It's just ice. I put in $3 because 3 years ago today. Yeah, tomorrow. I was at St. Thomas getting my chest cracked open, unexpected. And 24 hours after that, the first person who visited me was from this club with a red blanket that is kind of historically what we give out when someone's in the hospital. And when you're in the hospital, a red velvet blanket feels a whole lot better than those other blankets. But that was a special gift, and I praise the Lord that here I am three years later and feeling very good.
I don't have a dollar, but I got $5. Go on.
Nope.
First of all, I had the honor of accompanying Steve Tate and a bunch of others to read to the first grade kids. Roger, thank you for all those years of keeping that going. It was terrific. Those kids, they're really attentive. Get them at first grade, for God's sakes. They kind of remind me of all the Army guys out there. Go Navy.
We had a great time at the Rotary banquet. It was a lot of fun. And I sat next to an individual who I thought was a prior city manager, Jason Gage, but I found out that he was a card shark. He got more blackjacks than you would even think about.
All right. Oh.
I'm thankful for two things. One, my wife just had shoulder surgery last week, was on the road recovering and sleeping, and so am I finally. And the other thing is, you're probably aware that I'm involved helping the city raise money awareness for park systems. And we've helped participate in fundraising for the new park that'll be opening tomorrow, Windy Hill, Old Smyrna Road. So there's a grand opening. If you want to come out and take a look at it, the city's opening their next park.
All right. We have anybody else? All right. I think that's it.
Thanks, Scott. Well, I am thankful to be here with everyone, all my friends. I am thankful that we have a great speaker today, and I'm going to try to do justice to his bio that is in like absolutely tiny, tiny print. But our speaker is Terrance Burns. Just in general, Terrance is a seasoned international sports and Olympic marketing executive. He has more than 30 years of experience in marketing communications. So what we also know, just in talking, Terrance is from Nashville. He lived here a long time. He is the youngest of 24 first cousins. So you can imagine what Christmas is like for their family. We're glad to have Terrance here. Terrance spent 15 years at Delta, did a lot of work with them. And then because of his work with Delta and Delta's sponsorship with the Olympics, he got involved with the International Olympic Committee. He is responsible or been involved in 6 winning Olympic bids. He's been involved in 2 winning FIFA World Cup bids. So he is very international. He rarely lives in one place in the United States. He travels wherever his events are and things like that. So we are very grateful to have him here. Terrance is a graduate of Emory and Georgia State. So if there's any alums, ooh. All right, so you can say whatever you want to. Nobody's going to be able to question you on that. But we are very glad to hear about him. He has a proven track record in managing multi-million-dollar budgets, driving successful global marketing initiatives. That is his passion and his work life. But he has another passion and a book he is working on right now, and that's what he's going to talk to us about today. So Terrance, I will turn the podium over to you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Susie. Hey, everybody. This is an efficient organization. I like how fast everything moves. I left Nashville in 2nd grade. That would have been in 1966. I know I don't look older than 30, but I am. Moved back here in 2022, so it's all new to me, actually. We come back to Tennessee for family reunions, but it was up in Smithville, DeKalb County, which is where my mother's from. rarely to Nashville. So it's all new to me. So I typically speak a lot about what I do for a living because people like the Olympics and it's interesting to talk about, but this is not what we're going to talk about today. I'm writing 2 books as we speak, and in the course of the other book, I had to do some family research and found out something pretty interesting about this fellow behind me, a guy named Stephen Hopkins, who I like to say is the greatest American you've never heard of, and he actually was English, which is true. So I want to tell you an American story that you're kind of familiar with, but telling it in a different way, and that's our founding story around the Pilgrims. First, how many people here can trace their family lineage to Mayflower people, Mayflower descendants? Usually there's a few. There's 35 million people around the world who are descendants of the Pilgrims, of the Mayflower people. There's about a little less than 1 million descended from Stephen Hopkins, and I'm one of them. He's my 10th great grandfather on my mother's side. She's a Snow. So if you've ever been to Smithville, has anybody ever been to Smithville up on Center Hill Lake in DeKalb County? When you're going up 70 and you go up that big hill before you get to Smithville, that's called Snow Hill. And that's my mother's family, and they're descendants from the Hopkins family. When we think about American history, we think about these big events, right? We think about the Revolution, the Civil War. We think about the Mayflower, of course, and Pilgrims, and those are all good. But history really is more than events. It's really about people like us. And people are not ideal. People are flawed. They're stubborn. They make bad decisions. And this gentleman we're going to talk about today made a lot of them. He got in trouble a lot. People carry forward ideas without actually realizing they're doing it through history, though history is written by the powerful, the people with titles. If you read the history of the Plymouth plantation, the colony, written by Bradford and Brewster, you don't hear a lot about the other people who actually made it work, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Hopkins is one of those people. He lived through 3 of the most interesting things in American history. He was shipwrecked on Bermuda, tried for mutiny, found guilty. They tried to hang him. He got out of it. Then he went to Jamestown. Does anybody know what Jamestown is? We're going to talk a little bit about that. The colony that almost wasn't a colony. He made it there, got stuck for 4 or 5 years. Then he went back to England, and somehow he made it to a group of people who were called separatists who wanted to be Pilgrims. So he left in 1609 on this ship. It's called the Sea Venture. And they were part of the Third Fleet. They were the third fleet to go to Jamestown to try to save Jamestown. Jamestown was failing. They knew it. People would come back and forth across the ocean. It took about 2 months, 65 days to get across the ocean. The English, in their wisdom, sent a bunch of gentlemen to the first founding of Jamestown. Now, these were people who didn't know how to build fires, kill deer, skin them, build cabins, fires, plant, didn't know how to do anything. That was the first problem. And within a very short period of time, it was pretty clear that they weren't going to be very successful. So the Virginia Company kept sending fleet after fleet after fleet. So Stephen Hopkins was on the Third Fleet. And we're going to go a little deeper into that. That may be what he looked like. We're not quite sure. Somebody drew that in the 1800s based on somebody's memory of somebody's memory of somebody's memory. His daughter was named Constance. He had a lot of kids, I think 13. And Constance married a guy named Nicholas Snow, who was the second ship to come to Plymouth after the Mayflower. It was called the Anne. And the Snows are where I came from. It's my mother's family. It's kind of always been part of our family lore, but nobody really cares. A bunch of old people talking about somebody who's your 10th great grandfather. I didn't care. And but as I started writing this book, he became more interesting to me because I like history. And I recognized in many ways, it's going to sound funny, he was born an Englishman and died an Englishman. He may have been the first American in the way that we think, in the way that we act, in the way we look at personal liberties. He questioned authority to the point where they almost hung him. He worked across cultures. He was our first ambassador. He could actually speak indigenous languages and could work with the natives. He didn't accept the status quo. He was contrarian as hell. He was kind of very, very independent, don't tread on me kind of guy at a time where that didn't even exist. And his life is kind of a lens through we can watch the beginning emerging American character. He lived at a time in England. I have to make sure I'm on the right slide because I don't have a vanity slide here. England in the 17th century was a terrible place for people that were poor, and most people were poor. The country was economically unstable for everything. Food shortages were common. Life expectancy was short. The plague was raging. Religious, political persecution. The poor lived at the mercy of the wealthy, and there wasn't much mercy. But like every time there's uncertainty, somebody says, well, there's a business opportunity there. So the Virginia Company created itself. It said, we can start sending people to the New World and give them a chance to start over, give them the chance to start again. And they offered this to farmers, clerks, yeomen, widows, second sons who didn't inherit. People just, bless you, people just desperate enough to get on a boat, having no idea if it actually would end up where it was supposed to go. How desperate would you have to be if you think about it? He was a working class Englishman. He was a clerk, which means he could read and write, which was pretty rare outside the upper classes. That made him very useful to colonies. We had the ability to keep records, marriages, manage stores, communicate, etc. So his decision to leave England and his small family was not really based on romance or adventure. It was about economic survival. He knew he'd have to go to Virginia, it was called the Virginia Colony, and spend 7 years as an indentured servant, and maybe he would get some land after that, and maybe he could establish himself, and maybe go back to England and get his family, and maybe bring them back. That's a lot of maybes. He had a wife, he had 3 kids when he left, and here's one of the interesting things. He had no idea of knowing that he would never see his wife again or his eldest child. They would die while he was in Virginia. So he goes back. But first, let's go to Jamestown. Everybody raise their hand that you'd heard of Jamestown. Have anybody been to Jamestown? You can go and see it today. It's pretty interesting. As I said, it was failing. Hopkins was the clerk to the minister that was going. Religion was a very definitive part of colonialization of the British Empire. 9 ships. The Third Fleet was 9 ships. They had everything that the colony needed. They had food, they had tools, they had soldiers, they had weapons, they had seeds, and they had 600 people. And they thought, this is it. This is what we need to go save Jamestown. And Hopkins was on the flagship, as I showed you earlier, the Sea Venture. They had everything they needed, but back then they didn't have the Weather Channel. So about a week outside of leaving, they hit a 4-day hurricane. 4-day hurricane. One of the largest hurricanes in history, maybe. It's really one of the greatest survival stories in the Atlantic as well, separate than American history. Imagine 4 days being on the ship that is about to break in two. You don't even know it. I mean, most of the people on the ship were not sailors. They were people like Hopkins. They weren't used to being in a ship, especially in a hurricane. You had men changed to pumps, hand pumps that they would sit and do like this to pull water up out of the bottom and put it over the side to keep the water line below the gunwales. 4 days of darkness, fear, desperation. Nobody had CNN, nobody had cell phones, nobody had Fox News. There was nothing. The ship began falling apart. Caulking started coming out of the seams. Men were ankle deep, shin deep, thigh deep in water on the ship. And suddenly 2 words, land ho, land ho. And they looked up through the storm. They saw what is now Bermuda. And they knew it was Bermuda then. A guy named Captain Newport, not Bob Newhart. Newport was captaining the ship, and they were sinking. They were throwing everything over. They were throwing over pigs. They were throwing over their kitchen equipment. They were throwing over barrels of water, beer, anything that they could to keep the ship afloat. And he realized they weren't going to make it. And he could see a reef right on this side of the beach. So he aimed for the reef. And lo and behold, the ship made it onto the reef and kind of got stuck there. And that was its saving grace. It couldn't move, it couldn't sink. And they actually got every single soul off of that ship onto the beach there in Bermuda, which became one of his most formative years, Hopkins. They found something that they didn't expect: abundance. Birds were so numerous that you could throw your hat up and they would fall into your lap and you could eat them. There were turtles walking up out of the sea, almost getting into the fires that they were eating them. There was fresh water in pools. There was timber for building. But paradise is complicated because nothing's there. You have to build stuff. And when you force soldiers, sailors, gentlemen, indentured servants all together on what's essentially martial law, human nature takes over, doesn't it? Hopkins was an impatient guy. He had a mind for order, but he was very uncomfortable with the way authority was asserted without a true reference. And the leadership, Governor Gates, who was on the ship with them, ruled by decree. Everything was rationed, and it had to be. Tools, assignments, etc. It was run quite strict, as it should have been. But Hopkins had an idea, and he didn't like it. He said, our charter says that you are the governor, and this is how we will govern ourselves once we land in Virginia. That's what the charter says. We're not in Virginia. We're at a place that we don't know where it is. And I'm not sure that makes sense. We should kind of decide ourselves, shouldn't we? And elect our own leaders and our own laws and follow those. And sounds kind of normal to us now. It was pretty provocative in 1609. And this is where it really gets interesting. Hopkins wasn't flogged, but many people were in Bermuda. He said that the governing documents that they carried were relevant for Virginia, not Bermuda. Therefore, why don't we make up our own? Governor Gates said, that's interesting. That's treason. We're going to try you. No, we're not. You're guilty. I'm going to hang you. So he did what any of us would probably do. He started begging for mercy. He told Gates about his family back in England. He said, I'm not treasonous. I'm just trying to be practical here. And then suddenly other people started holding up for him because he was a guy who helped everybody as much as he could. And there was a gentleman that was on the ship called William Strachey, who, for lack of a better word, would be like a reporter, but he kept a journal of everything. So everything I'm telling you is historical fact and record. The book I'm writing, historical fiction around all of this, by the way. I don't want to write another history book because I don't think the lay people outside of the history world are interested in it. But if you can make a great book like Pillars of the Earth, something like that, people like historical fiction. So he got off. Strachey held up for him. It's all written in the record. The Reverend held up for him. It's all in the record. But this moment really matters because I think it's something now we regard as American political DNA, if you think about it. The belief that power must justify itself. That's what he said. Authority must be accountable. That's what he said. Free people don't surrender their rights just because stuff gets hard. That's what he said. And they tried to hang him for it. So they built 2 boats in 9 months in Bermuda in 1609 by hand. They took timbers out of the Seawolf that was sitting there still on the reef. They pulled it apart as much as they could. There were a lot of cedar trees in Bermuda, if you've ever been there, so they cut cedar trees down, and they built 2 boats, the Deliverance and the Patience. And they got on those boats. And by the way, when they were in Bermuda, there were also 2 indigenous Native Americans with them on the ship that were going back to the New World, who the Virginia Company had in London, kind of like as zoo animals, to be honest with you, but they were ostensibly translators and diplomats. One could speak English very well, one not so much. And Hopkins befriended them and started learning their language and started learning, how to live in tough conditions. So And they also left 2 people on Bermuda. There were 2 people that were so bad that Governor Gates said, we're just going to leave you here. And they did. And those people, about 2 years later, when the English went back to Bermuda, those guys were well-fed, tan, healthy, because they lived in a place of abundance. And if you go to Bermuda today, there are families who are very proud of their ancestry. They descend from these 2 people. Like if you go to Australia, they're very proud. If you go to like Boston, people are very proud if they're descended from Mayflower descendants. They're called Brahmins. It's kind of off-putting to me. It's why I'm not in the Mayflower Society. I think it's kind of elitist, but it's cool if you are. If you go to Australia, they're very proud of their ancestors who were convicts. So we all got to be proud of something. So they finally made it to Jamestown, and they were expecting, you know, a struggling but functioning colony. What did they find there? Devastation. Utter devastation. The winter of 1609 and 10 was called the starving time. Disease, famine, Indians, everything. Decimated them. There were originally 500 colonists in Jamestown, and when they got there, there were 60 left. They were eating leather. They'd eaten all the dogs. They were catching the rats and eating them, and now we have discovered that they were actually eating themselves as well, digging up the dead and eating their bodies. Into this misery walks Hopkins and these people who had been in Bermuda for 9 months, who were tanned and healthy and well-fed. And they had food, but the devastation was so utter that Governor Gates gave it a couple of weeks, and he said, let's leave. Let's burn it down. We're leaving. We're going to Newfoundland, or we're going back to England. They got in their little ships, and as they put the 60 people on, and as they were leaving, the James River enters into the Atlantic Ocean. It's all true. There's an armada of English ships. The 4th Fleet had just arrived. The 4th Fleet. And it was governed by a guy named De La Warr, D-E-L-A-W-R, which is where we get Delaware, by the way. And he said, where are you guys going? I said, well, that place is terrible. We're leaving it. And he said, no, you're not. Turn around. We're going to go back and fix it. And they did. And they did. That's what it looks like today. Tidal, swamp, malaria, terrible place to build a colony. Couldn't grow anything, but they tried. So Hopkins stayed there about 4 or 5 more years as a clerk to Reverend Buck. Anybody heard of Pocahontas? Well, she married John Rolfe, who became a tobacco baron. He took seeds. And so Reverend Buck and Thomas Hopkins performed that marriage. This period really shaped him. He saw the harshness of colonial life. He saw the political fractures between the leaders, the challenges of dealing with Native Americans and diplomacy. He learned more of the native language, more of how those people lived in that environment. It was a rare skill. It was very valuable. And he learned something else. Survival in America wasn't really about title or rank, which the British lived on. It was about adaptability, cultural awareness, cooperation. And those lessons came back to him when he went to Plymouth with the Pilgrims and actually saved them. So while he was in Jamestown doing what he was doing, as I told you, his wife and his eldest daughter died. This tells us, you look at the parish records, they actually list her in 1613 as a widow, which means they thought Stephen Hopkins was dead. So she died and his children were declared orphans. And it's not clear whether he found out about this before he went back to England or when he got to England. And I'm trying to figure out how I want to put it for dramatic tension in the book. It doesn't matter. It's my book. I'll write what I want. So he gets back to England and his family, he doesn't have a wife. He's only got 2 of his 3 kids. He doesn't have any land. All the stuff he went for didn't happen. So he could have given up. And many people did. But he kept working. One thing he didn't know was Strachey's journal that I told you, that he was writing about the shipwreck and all that happened in Bermuda. That journal went back to England before Hopkins did. And Strachey was a good friend of a guy named William Shakespeare. Shakespeare wrote a play, his last play, called The Tempest. Maybe you read it in high school. I did. It was his last play. And it was about, lo and behold, a shipwreck. And one of the characters was named Stefano. And historians today clearly say that The Tempest was about the sea venture, shipwreck on Bermuda. And Stefano, who was a drunk, by the way, was about Stephen Hopkins. So now I've told you about an American founder who survived a shipwreck, mutiny, almost being hung in Bermuda. He survived the brutality of Jamestown. He sailed on the Mayflower and helped start our American narrative. And he was a character in a Shakespeare play. Now, I've seen a lot of resumes, but I've never seen one with that much stuff on it. I bet you didn't know that, did you? So when he got back to England, he really wasn't the man who left before, but he had a lot of skills. He understood how Native Americans spoke. He understood how they lived. He understood how to live in the wilderness. He understood what the Virginia Company could and couldn't do. And he moved to London and got married, remarried pretty quickly, which widowers with children back in those days did, and maybe they still do, I don't know. They're married a lady named Elizabeth Fisher. They started building their family, and apparently he did well at something. We're not quite sure. He had two servants, Edward Doherty and Edward Leicester, both of whom went on the Mayflower. They were the only people on the Mayflower with servants. Go figure. But it's not enough for Hopkins. He's restless. He's relentless. He's already tasted freedom, and he's trying to figure out a way to get back, which leads us to the Mayflower. Leads us to that magnificent, magical ship called the Mayflower. He signs on, and here's where the most misunderstood part of Mayflower history begins. Hopkins was not a pilgrim. There were 102 people on this ship. He was not a religious zealot. He worked for a clerk, for a minister, but he wasn't really particularly religious. He was not a Puritan separatist fleeing religious persecution, as 50 of those people were, that we call pilgrims today. The other 50 were called strangers. That's what the pilgrims called them, strangers. And he was a stranger. And these were people who had practical skills that knew how to keep a colony alive. And he'd already been through this. So he boards the Mayflower with his two surviving children, his new heavily pregnant wife, 6-7 months pregnant, his two servants. Halfway through the 65-day voyage, she has the baby in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, below decks, with water and bilge and feces and cow dung and rotted beef, and you name it, all around her. Has a little boy, and they name him Oceanus. Maybe you learned that in elementary school. I did. I had no idea. That was my cousin all those years ago. But he's the only person on that ship who had ever been to America. The only one who had any idea what they were about to face. So in a group of idealists and religious zealots and visionaries, he was a pretty practical guy to have, which leads us to this. Does everybody know what that is? You remember studying the Mayflower Compact in high school? The hallmark of American democracy. There's a straight line from that document to the Declaration of Independence, to the Constitution, to the Bill of Rights, to everything that makes us American. Started with that document. Why did that document, what caused that document to be created? They already had a document, just like the people on the Sea Venture. They had a governing document. Well, the same damn thing happened. They landed 200 miles north of where they were supposed to be. They were supposed to be in Virginia. They were off Cape Cod, and they knew it was Cape Cod. English and Spanish had been in North America for over 100 years, mapping the coast. They knew that that was Cape Cod. So the strangers, some of them on board, started saying, we're not in Virginia, so your authority isn't any good here. We're going to do it our way. And Hopkins had seen this movie before. Matter of fact, he was part of that movie with Bermuda almost 10 years earlier. So he and others argued that we need something to coalesce ourselves as a people. We can't get on, and they didn't. We can't put a foot onto that land or get off this boat until we have a document that we all agree upon that says how we're going to live, what we're going to agree to, who's going to do it, and that's it. And he signed it right there. Signed it with a V, sometimes PH, sometimes a V. Spelling was pretty fluid back in the 17th century. But they created something called the body politic. And it was phenomenal. First time in human history that anybody, a group of people, a community had decided, here's how we're going to live. Let's all sign it. And that first winter was harsh, and maybe not as bad as Jamestown, but disease. They had no shelter. They landed at the kind of the end of the mini ice age. I don't know how they survived. Anybody been in Cape Cod in the wintertime? Today it's awful, but in 1620, the cold was relentless. It was deadly. Half of that ship died that first winter. They landed in November. By April of 1621, they were half dead. Half of them. Hopkins, his now 3 kids, and 2 servants were alive. So he must have known how to do something. And he was really important to the Pilgrims. The first thing they did is they went out to forage and try to find something to eat. And they found a winter stash of corn, and they dug it up, and they stole it from the Indians. Hopkins said, you have to pay this back. No, we don't. Yes, you do. So eventually they paid it back. How many people have heard of Squanto? Remember Squanto from school? Squanto was the American Indian who could speak English because he'd been to London, he'd gone back. The Pilgrims actually landed in where his village was, called Poxatet. It was completely desolate. They'd all been wiped out by smallpox, tuberculosis, European diseases. But he meets them. He walks up, Samoset actually walked up and said, hello, Englishmen, and they all freaked out. But Squanto stayed with the Pilgrims, taught them how to fish, how to plant corn, and he lived with Stephen Hopkins and his family in his home because he felt more comfortable with him because he was used to being around Indians. There's a lot more. I'm doing this really fast. So what do I call him the first American? Not because he was the first settler, because he wasn't. Not because he was flawless or a visionary, because he wasn't. But I think his life contained a set of instincts that we here today kind of instantly recognize as uniquely American. You can't imagine how odd that was in 1620. He was self-reliant. He was extraordinarily independent. He distrusted authority. He trusted himself. He adapted to catastrophe. He thrived on it, frankly. He rebuilt and rebuilt and rebuilt and rebuilt. He lived almost longer than any pilgrim. He died in 1644. He crossed the ocean 3 times when just once usually killed someone. And also at a time where most of the people on the planet never have been more than 15 miles from the place they were born. He was the prototypical American. He wasn't shaped by perfect ideology, but by practical resilience. Think about that today. Think about it in today's culture and political wars, what I'm talking about. I think he foreshadowed what is our defining tension in our society today, this push and pull between cooperation and individual independence, between individual will and communal survival. And he embodied that tension before there was anything called America. He taught me, at least, that the courage is not rarely a grand gesture. It's a decision made out of exhaustion, fear, maybe grief. It's to keep rowing when you want to stop, because they had to row those big ships to get them out into the wind. It's the courage to question things and authority, even when you think it may be dangerous. And he taught me, at least, that leadership isn't really positional. Leadership is being useful, steady, willingness to speak up, when silence sometimes is easier. And I think those lessons are as modern today as they are historical. So what makes him unique is he didn't just live in all these places. That's Plymouth, colony. You can go there today. It looks just like that. And you can meet my 10th great grandfather. There's a man there who plays him, and he stays in character the whole time. It's kind of fascinating. He didn't just live in Jamestown, Bermuda, and Plymouth. He lived when it was establishing its character, our character. There is no other American, there's no other figure in American history, none, zero, none, who lived in all three places. He's kind of the thread that runs from Jamestown all the way to Plymouth. He's kind of he's not the symbol of America, I think, as we imagine it. He's the version that actually exists. It's complicated. We're flawed, but we're brave, we're stubborn, and more. And I've lived and worked abroad all my life. I've only worked in the United States 2 of the last 34 years. And there's something that we own that no one else has. And it's called optimism. It's called hope. It's called the belief in tomorrow. Tomorrow will be better than today. And if you think the world thinks that way, it just doesn't. Something about us is different. And it's because of stories like this. So I'm going to close with saying one word that I think describes him and us. It's the word called forward. He didn't always move forward with confidence or certainty, but he did move. Bless you. He did move like we do. He kept going. We think about American beginnings. We think about these grand speeches and monumental decisions, and there are many of them, but the truth is America was built on countless small acts of survival and intention, like him and like all of your ancestors in this room. And he shows me you don't have to be a governor or somebody important to make history. You don't have to be famous. You just got to keep going. Forward is not a direction. It's a posture toward life. That's it. That's Stephen Hopkins. I hope you've enjoyed a little bit of his story today, and it's a pleasure being with you. Thank you so much. Any questions or comments, observations? You probably know more about it than I do, but anybody?
Sir, thank you so much for that talk. I really enjoyed that. I want to ask you, how does it make you feel knowing that that was your great-great-grandfather?
It's interesting for a cocktail party, probably. To me, you got to be careful with stuff like that because there's a fine line between being proud and being boastful. And I've done the math. I do have a minor in biology because I wanted to be a dentist. I made a deal in organic chemistry, so I had to go to business school. I did it. I think we share 0.00024% DNA. So you're probably as much related to him as I am, but it's something to talk about. Yeah. I think when we see stories like that, we like to see ourselves and our ancestors. And I think once you get about 3 generations back, it's not very relevant. Anything else?
You mentioned earlier talk that reading right, when few people would do that. Who thought was the reason right?
His parents, his father insisted on he getting an education. He knew that being of lowly birth, that might be a differentiating factor for him. So he, like all of us, if you are the beneficiaries of great parents like I am, he was. It's that simple. They scraped together all they could to send him to some church school, and he probably went to what's the equivalent of maybe 4th or 5th grade today. But he could read and write. And in those days, that's like saying you know how to engineer AI. Think about it. Anything else? I don't know, man. I've got 170,000 words written, and I need to get it to 90. And I've got 12 chapters, and I'm on version 7 of chapter 3 right now to rewrite it, but I'll get it done. One more.
Used to be when you published, like you'd have to have a publisher, they'd agree to do a set number of prints.
Yeah.
Nowadays it's on demand. So describe the process when you finish your book, how are you going to publish it and where's it going to be?
Well, the process is first you get an agent. I have an editor right now editing my other book, which is about my life in the Olympic years. You get an editor really to help you have something that's presentable. You need an agent pretty quick, and they'll tell you whether this is something that is really publishable or should you do it yourself. And I don't know, to be honest with you, if anybody would be interested in this story until I get objective third-party eyes to look at it who are professionals. To me, it's interesting. To my family, it's interesting. And if that's all it is, that's fine. you know, it beats sucking at golf, which is what I do. So, that's it. Thank you all again for your time. Merry Christmas and have a great holiday.
Terrance, real quick, we certainly appreciate you sharing your story, sharing your family with us. We have a special gift.
Oh, thank you.
Talking about our service project, one of the things we do is read the children in ways of time. You wouldn't mind signing that book? When we go to read that and we leave that behind in the classroom, we will tell them about your story. So we appreciate you sharing everything. Great to hear about all the countless small acts in our lives that make such a difference. And that's kind of what Rotary is. So glad to have everyone here. Glad to have all our guests, Mike and Maria. Glad to, you're winding up your time as being guests. Thank you for being here, Elliot and Holcomb. Glad to have you. For Rotarians, we got lots of different projects going on. Please keep those in mind. Be sure next week you are here for our voting. As you're leaving today, there is a book out there on the table. Louis Rankin's birthday is coming up on December 17th. He's been unable to join us. He had a fall. He had a pacemaker put in. So we've got a book, and we would like everyone to sign it and just write a little note of encouragement to Louis, and we will get that to him. So welcome to everyone. We need to stack the tables and chairs. Move the tables. Stack the chairs. 8 high. 8 high. If there's nothing else for the good of Rotary, I'm sorry? Just Louis. If there's nothing else for the good of Rotary, we're adjourned.